Conclusion: in Gone with the Wind, Margaret Mitchell presents a vivid picture of the collapse of the Southern aristocracy and the dramatic changes that transformed the South. The novel captures the disintegration of a way of life built on slavery and privilege and portrays the challenges faced by individuals as they navigated the new social, economic, and political landscape. Through Scarlett O'Hara's resilience and adaptability, Mitchell illustrates both the loss and the opportunities that came with the collapse of the Old South, highlighting the tenacity required to survive in a world that had changed forever. How Gone with the Wind reflects historical shifts through its characters and setting. Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind reflects the profound historical shifts that occurred in the American South during and after the Civil War through its richly developed characters and evocative setting. The novel's portrayal of the transformation of Southern society, from the genteel aristocracy of the antebellum period to the harsh realities of the post-war era, is vividly illustrated by the changing fortunes of its characters and their environment. Characters as reflections of historical change. The key characters in Gone with the Wind embody the differing responses of Southerners to the upheaval caused by the Civil War and Reconstruction. Scarlett O'Hara is the central figure through which these shifts are most powerfully reflected. Before the war, Scarlett is the pampered daughter of a wealthy plantation owner, living in a world defined by strict social codes and opulence. However, as the war ravages the South, she is forced to abandon her privileged, romanticized notions of life and become a fierce survivor. Her journey from a carefree belle to a ruthless businesswoman illustrates the collapse of the old Southern way of life and the need for adaptability in a rapidly changing world. In Mitchell's portrayal, families like the O'Haras of Tara embody the old Southern values: wealth generated through cotton, a paternalistic attitude towards slaves, and a rigid social hierarchy that celebrated honor and gentility. The Southern elite, including characters like Ashley Wilkes and Gerald O'Hara, lived in a world where traditions were upheld, and a sense of grandeur and stability prevailed. However, the Civil War shattered this world. The war's destruction of infrastructure and the loss of labor due to emancipation brought an abrupt end to the plantation lifestyle. The Southern aristocracy, unable to adapt to the new economic realities without their enslaved labor force, faced financial ruin. Families who once lived in splendor were left impoverished, their grand estates reduced to ruins. Mitchell portrays this collapse vividly through the fate of Tara, which Scarlett O'Hara fights desperately to save as her family loses its wealth and status. Dramatic changes in the social landscape, the War and Reconstruction period brought significant shifts in Southern society. The old order, in which the plantation owners held all the power, was replaced by a new, chaotic social structure. The former enslaved people were freed, leading to the dismantling of the existing social hierarchy. Scarlett's struggle to maintain Tara and adapt to the changing times symbolizes the broader challenges faced by the Southern gentry. Characters such as Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler represent the different ways individuals attempted to navigate this new world. Scarlett, with her determination and resourcefulness, rejects the genteel passivity of the Old South and takes drastic measures to ensure her survival. She challenges gender norms, takes on traditionally male roles in business, and uses her cunning to rebuild her family's wealth. Rhett Butler, meanwhile, represents a pragmatic figure who thrives by embracing change and capitalizing on the opportunities presented by the turmoil of the war and Reconstruction. The contrast between Scarlett and Ashley Wilkes illustrates the inability of many in the Southern aristocracy to adapt. While Scarlett is willing to do whatever it takes to survive, Ashley remains bound to the ideals of the past, unable to adjust to the new social realities, which leaves him feeling lost and powerless in the post-war South. Economic and political changes. Economically, the collapse of the plantation system led to widespread poverty across the South. The once wealthy landowners, who had relied on enslaved labor, found themselves without the means to maintain their estates. Scarlett's venture into business, including buying and running a lumber mill, symbolizes a significant departure from the old Southern economy. She breaks with tradition by engaging in commerce, an area previously considered inappropriate for women and aristocrats. Politically, the Reconstruction era brought about significant changes as the South was placed under military rule, and newly freed African Americans were granted citizenship and the right to vote. The Southern aristocracy, which had previously held power, found itself disenfranchised and humiliated. Mitchell captures the resentment and bitterness of the Southern elites towards these changes. Portraying their struggle against the loss of power and the intrusion of Northern carpetbaggers who came to profit from the South's devastation, the Ku Klux Klan and other resistance movements that emerged in the post-war period are portrayed in the novel as reactions to the dramatic shifts in power dynamics. The Southern elites, stripped of their previous privileges, sought to reclaim their authority, often through violent means. Rhett Butler represents a pragmatic, forward-thinking Southerner who recognizes that the old Southern aristocracy is doomed. Unlike characters like Ashley Wilkes, who clings to the past, Rhett sees the opportunity in the chaos brought by war. His willingness to profit from the war effort and his disregard for traditional Southern values reflect the emerging New South, a place where those who adapt and seize opportunities can thrive, regardless of social background. Ashley Wilkes serves as a contrast to Scarlett and Rhett. He represents the idealistic, genteel planter class that cannot adapt to the new realities. Throughout the novel, Ashley is unable to let go of the ideals of the antebellum South, leaving him lost and unable to cope with the challenges brought by the war and its aftermath. His reluctance to change reflects the tragic fate of the Southern aristocracy, which was unable to survive the social and economic upheaval caused by the war. The setting as a symbol of transformation, the setting of Gone with the Wind also powerfully reflects the historical changes of the period. The novel opens at Tara, the O'Hara family plantation, which symbolizes the grandeur and stability of the antebellum South. Tara is portrayed as a place of abundance and beauty, representing the traditional Southern way of life that is centered around agriculture and supported by enslaved labor. However, as the Civil War progresses, Tara falls into decay, mirroring the broader collapse of the Southern economy and way of life. Scarlett's struggle to save Tara reflects the desperation felt by many Southerners as they faced the destruction of everything they knew. The physical decline of Tara, from a thriving plantation to a home that barely provides for Scarlett and her family, symbolizes the loss of wealth and prestige experienced by the Southern aristocracy. The city of Atlanta also serves as a key setting that reflects the dramatic changes in the South. Before the war, Atlanta is a bustling, prosperous city. During the war, it becomes a symbol of the destruction wrought upon the South, as it is burned by Union forces during Sherman's march to the sea. After the war, Atlanta begins to rebuild, symbolizing the South's attempts to rise from the ashes and adapt to the new post-war realities. Scarlett's involvement in the rebuilding of Atlanta through her business ventures highlights the shift from an agricultural economy to one that increasingly relies on commerce and industry, a significant change in the Southern landscape. Reflections of social change. The characters and setting of Gone with the Wind also reflect the social upheaval that came with the collapse of the old order. The novel depicts the decline of the Southern planter class and the rise of new social groups, including the carpetbaggers and scalawags who came to the South during Reconstruction. Characters like Frank Kennedy, who marries Scarlett and becomes involved in commerce, illustrate how individuals who were not part of the old Southern aristocracy found new opportunities in the shifting social and economic landscape. The novel also reflects the changing roles of women during this period. Scarlett defies the traditional expectations placed on Southern women by taking on the management of Tara, running a lumber mill, and making bold business decisions. Her independence and determination stand in stark contrast to the idealized Southern belle, embodied by Melanie Wilkes, who adheres to the old values of femininity, loyalty, and gentleness. Scarlett's ability to adapt and succeed in a male-dominated world reflects the broader societal changes that emerged as the old norms of Southern life were upended. Conclusion: through its characters and setting, Gone with the Wind vividly reflects the historical shifts that transformed the South during and after the Civil War. The collapse of the Southern aristocracy, the destruction of the plantation economy, and the rise of new social and economic dynamics are all brought to life through Scarlett O'Hara's personal journey, the changing fortunes of Tara and Atlanta, and the fates of those around her. Margaret Mitchell uses these elements to illustrate the resilience required to survive in a world that has been irrevocably changed, and to explore the tension between nostalgia for the past and the harsh realities of adapting to a new future. Scarlett O'Hara. The protagonist of Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind is one of literature's most compelling characters, a heroine whose strength, complexity, and determination are matched by her significant flaws. Scarlett is not a conventional heroine. Instead, she is a multidimensional character whose resilience and willingness to survive at all costs reveal both her admirable qualities and her moral shortcomings. Strength and determination. Scarlett O'Hara's defining traits are her strength and unyielding determination. From the beginning of the novel, she is portrayed as a headstrong young woman who refuses to conform to the societal expectations placed upon her. As the pampered daughter of a wealthy plantation owner, she initially lives a carefree life, concerned primarily with her looks, popularity, and her obsession with Ashley Wilkes. However, when the Civil War devastates the South, Scarlett's life is turned upside down, forcing her to draw upon a strength she did not know she had. She transforms from a sheltered Southern belle into a resourceful survivor. After the fall of Atlanta, she returns to Tara and assumes the role of the head of the family, working tirelessly to ensure that her family and the plantation survive. Scarlett's famous vow, "I'll never be hungry again," encapsulates her tenacity and fierce will to overcome adversity. She does whatever it takes, whether it means getting her hands dirty in the fields, marrying for money, or engaging in business, to secure her and her family's future. Her determination extends into the business world, where she breaks social conventions by running a successful lumber mill, a role typically reserved for men. Scarlett's courage in taking on a traditionally male role, and her success despite the criticisms of those around her, showcase her willingness to fight against the limitations imposed on women during that time. Her entrepreneurial spirit is a key aspect of her strength, making her a pioneering figure among the Southern women of her era. Complexity and inner conflict. Scarlett's complexity lies in the contradictions within her character. On one hand, she is fiercely independent and capable of making tough decisions, but on the other, she is emotionally immature and often blinded by her desire for Ashley Wilkes. Her obsession with Ashley represents her inability to let go of the past and adapt emotionally, even as she proves highly adaptable in practical matters. Scarlett convinces herself that she is in love with Ashley, not recognizing that what she truly desires is the comfort and security of the old Southern way of life that Ashley symbolizes. Her complex relationship with Rhett Butler also adds depth to her character. Unlike Ashley, Rhett appreciates Scarlett for who she truly is, flaws and all. Despite their shared attraction and similar pragmatic approach to life, Scarlett's fixation on Ashley prevents her from acknowledging her true feelings for Rhett until it is too late. This inner conflict between her romantic ideals and the reality of her circumstances makes Scarlett a richly layered character who is both admirable and deeply frustrating. Flaws and moral ambiguity. Scarlett's determination and strength are admirable, but her flaws make her a morally ambiguous character. Her willingness to do whatever it takes to survive often leads her to make ruthless and selfish decisions. She marries Charles Hamilton out of spite, later marries Frank Kennedy for financial security, and manipulates people without regard for their feelings. Scarlett's lack of empathy and her disregard for social norms alienate her from those around her, including her family and friends. Her relationship with Melanie Wilkes highlights Scarlett's moral complexity. Despite Scarlett's envy of Melanie, and her initial resentment towards her for marrying Ashley, Melanie consistently shows her kindness and loyalty. Scarlett's inability to appreciate Melanie's genuine love and support reflects her emotional blindness. However, Scarlett also displays loyalty and protectiveness towards Melanie during times of crisis, such as during the Siege of Atlanta and in the aftermath of Rhett's escape from a lynch mob. This duality reveals that Scarlett, though selfish, is not entirely without a sense of responsibility or care for others. Scarlett's deep flaws also stem from her inability to empathize with those who are weaker or more vulnerable. She is often dismissive of the emotions and struggles of others, viewing them as obstacles to her goals. Her harsh treatment of Prissy, her exploitation of convict labor at her lumber mill, and her manipulation of those around her for personal gain all reflect her moral shortcomings. Scarlett's determination to succeed, while commendable, often crosses ethical boundaries, making her a character who is difficult to fully admire. the tragic consequence of flaws. By the end of the novel, Scarlett's flaws catch up with her. Her inability to understand her own emotions and her stubborn pursuit of Ashley lead to the loss of Rhett Butler, the one person who truly understood and loved her. When she finally realizes her love for Rhett, it is too late. Rhett has become disillusioned and leaves her. Scarlett's loss at the end of the novel is the consequence of her refusal to see the truth about herself and those around her. Despite her strength and resilience, her emotional blindness and selfishness leave her isolated, highlighting the tragic side of her character. Conclusion: Scarlett O'Hara is one of literature's most enduring and complex characters, a heroine whose fierce determination and resourcefulness are both her greatest strengths and her greatest weaknesses. Through her journey, Margaret Mitchell paints a vivid portrait of a woman shaped by the upheaval of the Civil War and Reconstruction. Scarlett's strengths make her a survivor, but her flaws, her selfishness, lack of empathy, and emotional blindness ultimately lead to her downfall. It is these contradictions that make Scarlett O'Hara such a compelling and memorable character, embodying both the resilience and the tragic flaws of the Old South. In Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind, three central characters, Rhett Butler, Ashley Wilkes, and Melanie Hamilton, serve as critical figures that shape Scarlett O'Hara's journey and reflect the broader changes occurring in the American South during and after the Civil War. Each character represents different ideals and plays a significant role in both Scarlett's life and the narrative's exploration of Southern society. Rhett Butler, the pragmatic outsider. Rhett Butler is one of the novel's most charismatic and complex figures. Rhett is introduced as a charming, cynical outsider who has no illusions about the South's romanticized ideals. He rejects the traditional values of the Southern aristocracy, recognizing the futility of their efforts to maintain a way of life that is crumbling under the pressures of war. This makes Rhett a highly pragmatic character. He sees the impending downfall of the Confederacy and chooses to profit from it. Working as a blockade runner during the war, Rhett's love for Scarlett is genuine but complicated. He admires her spirit, her determination, and her willingness to break the rules to survive. Despite his deep feelings, Rhett is well aware of Scarlett's flaws, particularly her obsession with Ashley Wilkes. Throughout the novel, Rhett's interactions with Scarlett are marked by a combination of attraction, frustration, and eventual disillusionment. He knows she is fixated on an illusion of Ashley, but he believes, at times, that he can win her love. Rhett's decision to leave Scarlett at the end of the novel, famously saying, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," is a moment of realization that despite everything, Scarlett is not ready to understand or reciprocate the love he has offered. Rhett's character symbolizes the transition to a new South, one that moves away from old ideals and embraces the pragmatic realities of survival and change. Ashley Wilkes, the idealistic dreamer. Ashley Wilkes represents the old Southern aristocracy, the genteel, romanticized version of the South that was lost in the Civil War. Unlike Scarlett, Ashley struggles to adapt to the changes that the war brings. He is portrayed as noble, kind, and introspective, but also indecisive and impractical. His idealism and nostalgia for the past prevent him from moving forward, and he becomes a symbol of the lost glory of the antebellum South. Scarlett's love for Ashley is central to her character. She sees Ashley as the embodiment of everything she desires: honor, grace, and the romantic ideal of the Old South. However, Scarlett's love for Ashley is based more on an illusion than reality. She idealizes him, holding on to her image of him as a perfect Southern gentleman, despite his inability to adapt to the harsh new world they face. Ashley, on the other hand, does care for Scarlett but remains devoted to his wife, Melanie. He admires Scarlett's strength, but knows they are fundamentally different, as Scarlett's ruthless determination contrasts sharply with his own passive acceptance of the changes around them. Ashley's inability to move on from the past makes him a tragic figure. Unlike Rhett and Scarlett, who both adapt to survive, Ashley remains trapped in a world that no longer exists. His grief over the lost way of life and his failure to embrace the future make him a poignant representation of the Old South's decline. Melanie Hamilton, the embodiment of Southern virtue. Melanie Hamilton is the complete opposite of Scarlett. She embodies the traditional virtues of kindness, loyalty, and compassion, qualities often romanticized as the best of the old Southern values. Melanie is gentle and physically frail, yet she possesses an inner strength and quiet courage that often goes unrecognized. Her unwavering loyalty to Scarlett, even when Scarlett covets her husband, and her ability to see the best in others, highlight her generosity of spirit, despite her differences from Scarlett. Melanie has a profound influence on her life. Melanie's love and friendship provide Scarlett with a moral anchor, even if Scarlett doesn't always recognize or appreciate it. Melanie represents the kind of goodness that transcends the chaos of war and reconstruction. Her loyalty to Scarlett during the most difficult times, such as helping her during childbirth and defending her during social scandals, show that she is willing to go to great lengths for those she loves. However, Scarlett's love for Ashley is based more on an illusion than reality. She idealizes him, holding on to her image of him as a perfect Southern gentleman, despite his inability to adapt to the harsh new world they face. Ashley, on the other hand, does care for Scarlett but remains devoted to his wife, Melanie. He admires Scarlett's strength but knows they are fundamentally different, as Scarlett's ruthless determination contrasts sharply with his own passive acceptance of the changes around them. Ashley's inability to move on from the past makes him a tragic figure. Unlike Rhett and Scarlett, who both adapt to survive, Ashley remains trapped in a world that no longer exists. His grief over the lost way of life and his failure to embrace the future make him a poignant representation of the Old South's decline. Melanie Hamilton, the embodiment of Southern virtue, Melanie Hamilton is the complete opposite of Scarlett. She embodies the traditional virtues of kindness, loyalty, and compassion, qualities often romanticized as the best of the old Southern values. Melanie is gentle and physically frail, yet she possesses an inner strength and quiet courage that often goes unrecognized. Her unwavering loyalty to Scarlett, even when Scarlett covets her husband, and her ability to see the best in others, highlight her generosity of spirit, despite her differences from Scarlett. Melanie has a profound influence on her life. Melanie's love and friendship provide Scarlett with a moral anchor, even if Scarlett doesn't always recognize or appreciate it. Melanie represents the kind of goodness that transcends the chaos of war and reconstruction. Her loyalty to Scarlett during the most difficult times, such as helping her during childbirth and defending her during social scandals, show that she is willing to go to great lengths for those she loves. Scarlett's longing for the past and her fight to protect Tara reveal her complex motivations. She desires both the love and security that Ashley represents and the power and independence that Tara symbolizes. Conclusion: the key characters of Gone with the Wind, Rhett Butler, Ashley Wilkes, and Melanie Hamilton, each represent different facets of Southern society and help illuminate the shifting landscape of the South during and after the Civil War. Scarlett's relationships with these characters reveal her strengths and flaws, and they all play crucial roles in her journey from a sheltered Southern belle to a hardened survivor. Scarlett's love for Ashley and her nostalgia for the carefree life at Tara before the war illustrate her struggle to reconcile her romantic ideals with the harsh realities of her new world. Through these characters and relationships, Margaret Mitchell creates a richly layered narrative about survival, love, and the inevitable changes brought by time and history. In Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind, the pre-war South is portrayed as a land of wealth, luxury, and privilege for a particular class, the Southern aristocracy. The novel paints a vivid picture of the antebellum South as an idyllic world of grand plantations, elegant parties, and a leisurely lifestyle, enjoyed by families like the O'Haras of Tara. However, this wealth and privilege were limited to a small elite, built upon the backs of enslaved laborers, and the novel subtly contrasts the grandeur of plantation life with the dark reality underlying its foundations. The idealized world of Southern aristocracy, the narrative of Gone with the Wind opens with a romanticized portrayal of the South, depicting the wealth and grandeur of the plantation-owning class. Tara, Scarlett O'Hara's family plantation, serves as a symbol of this lifestyle. Tara is described as a large, prosperous estate, surrounded by fertile land and tended by enslaved people who make possible the luxurious life enjoyed by the O'Hara family. The land itself is often portrayed with poetic imagery, symbolizing not just economic prosperity, but also the deep cultural roots and pride of the Southern elite. The plantation owners are depicted as benevolent, embodying traditional values of hospitality, honor, and chivalry. The O'Hara family, along with other wealthy neighbors like the Wilkes, represents this old Southern way of life. They live in grand houses, enjoy fine clothes, and host elaborate gatherings. The life Scarlett knows before the Civil War is characterized by an endless cycle of parties, barbecues, and social events, where young women like Scarlett flirt and plan for prosperous marriages, while young men uphold ideals of honor and gallantry. This society is built on clear social hierarchies, with the wealthy planters at the top, governing their land and their people with what they perceive as a paternalistic sense of responsibility. Gerald O'Hara, Scarlett's father, is portrayed as a man who takes pride in Tara and the legacy it represents. He views the land not merely as a source of income but as an integral part of his family's identity, emphasizing the romantic connection between the land and the Southern way of life, luxury, and carefree living. The luxury of the pre-war South is further depicted through the carefree lives of its privileged class. Scarlett's early life is filled with comfort and indulgence, as she enjoys a sense of entitlement that comes from being part of the upper echelon of Southern society. She is accustomed to the attention of numerous suitors, the security of her father's wealth, and the certainty of a well-ordered, predictable world. The plantation economy ensures that Scarlett and others like her live without any real hardships, free from the labor that sustains their wealth. The plantation homes are depicted as places of elegance and culture, where the women are dressed in fine gowns, men engage in polite conversation, and traditions are observed with strict adherence to social etiquette. This veneer of refinement and opulence is a central aspect of Mitchell's portrayal of the South. The reader is shown a society that takes pride in its customs and appears almost immune to the world's harsh realities, until the war changes everything. Ashley Wilkes represents the romantic and cultured ideal of this pre-war life. The Wilkes family, living at 12 Oaks, hosts grand parties that illustrate the affluence and cultured nature of the planter class. Ashley's love for literature and the arts, and his sense of honor, embody the refined sensibilities of the Old South. This culture, however, is portrayed as being somewhat detached from the practical realities of survival, which becomes a critical weakness when the war disrupts their way of life, the foundation of wealth and its fragility. While the pre-war South is depicted as a land of great beauty and luxury, Gone with the Wind does not entirely ignore the reality that this way of life is built on a fragile foundation. The wealth of the Southern aristocracy is entirely dependent on the institution of slavery, which provides the labor necessary to maintain the plantations and support the lavish lifestyles of the owners. The labor of the enslaved is what makes possible the prosperity and ease enjoyed by Scarlett and her family. The novel occasionally hints at the deep flaws underlying the Southern way of life. The genteel, cultured existence that the planters enjoy is contrasted with the suffering of the enslaved people who live on their plantations. While Mitchell presents a somewhat romanticized view of plantation life, the reader can still see that the comfort and privilege of families like the O'Haras come at a great cost to those who are denied freedom.